Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer. And that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host. It's Tom. How you doing, Tom?
Hello, friends.
And also joining us for the first time on the show, not a bouncing ball, it's Brad. It's Rhellion. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Sir, it is a pleasure to have you, as always. So we are going to talk, and of course we brought Rhellion in tonight because we're going to talk about the meta. We're going to talk about Masters lists. We're going to talk about sort of some hard-edge tournament stuff. So we had to get the Master. That's what it comes down to. And so there is no one better to turn to than Brad, and that's where we're going to go. We're going to look at some Masters lists. We're going to talk about what we think of them and what we think it says about the meta, talk about the meta in general, opinions on it, that sort of thing. So it's going to be a tournament discussion night. But of course, first, we've got some news, and there's lots of it. So, Tommy, what do we got, buddy?
Indeed, the rumor engine is back, and I can't find the picture anywhere.
Yeah, but I can, so I'm prepared.
Okay.
I already had it prepped, buddy. Here, let me share it here for you.
Way to be on the ball, Vince.
I'm ready.
So, fire, ghost cloak, one of those, maybe. What do you think, Brad?
I think I'll just turn off my camera and my mic.
It keeps getting muted. I think it's... Well, the question is it a ghost or is it fire? It's ghost fire, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Of course. It could be nothing else.
Yeah, obviously. It's ghost fire. I mean, okay.
This will be the time where your guest has nothing to add to this segment. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Brad, because I what is there to add to this? Like, yep, that sure is that thing. Like, there is absolutely nothing to guess about this, right? It's either fire or a ghosty. I would say it's ghost stuff because they don't tend to model fire with these round holes in it.
Right.
But they do spectral energy with the little holes in it. There you go. There's my best swing at an answer.
I believe the brimstone horrors are made out of fire and have holes in them.
Well, I'm looking at one right here next to me.
I'm just putting holes in your argument.
And darn it all, you are correct. In the left, like in this, I literally have a brimstone in my hand, and in his left arm, he has a little hole. All right, I give up. I got nothing.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, it's something. It's Ghostfire. It's some like, and we'll probably actually see this like sooner rather than later. Like, there are rumor engines from this time last year that has still not yet been revealed.
Sure.
And yet we'll probably know this within the month. That's what I'm guessing.
Sure. I also like very much how Brad said he has nothing to add to this segment and then promptly called me out on my BS guess. So that's just you're already winning, buddy.
Classy. Awesome. Next news item: Warhammer Miniature of the Year voting. That's right. We don't just get a list of 10 like products that are like the best. We get to contribute this time. So for those of you that haven't seen it yet, there's a link. We'll have it in the show notes. GW has invited, their community team has invited feedback from the community as to their favorite miniature that's been released this year. And there's a whole bunch. Get ready to do some scrolling.
Tailwind Vortex re-release.
The answer is vote for St. Celestine, because everybody needs to vote for our plastic sister of battle. That way they get the idea and they make more plastic sisters. All right, that's the only potential logical vote.
Sorry, I'm really selfish and I voted for the Ironclad already.
They're not going to make more boats for you, Tom. They're done with boats. You've got all your boats.
I want more boats.
You're voting for the past. I'm voting for the future.
Anyways, go vote. We'll have the link down below. Moving on. Nurgle, kind of a big deal right now.
Kind of.
This last week we saw the last half of the 7 days of Nurgle, We also saw the leak of the White Dwarf as people that had subscriptions received some of their orders. And so we got pricing and release dates. January 6th, we have the Battle Tome that's dropping, the Guo, the Tree, the cards, and the Scrivener. Those will go on pre-order on the 6th. On the 13th, the Lord of Blight, Sloppity, the Beasts, and the Puskboils. Surprisingly, there were no Pestigores, despite their occurrence in the lore. So that's disappointing, but whatever. I mean, Beastmen are allies. You can throw them in there and paint them green and brown. That works.
Sure.
You know, but even today they did a number, 2 shows, one on the lore of Nurgle and one on the kind of the crunch on the stream. And there's, I mean, like I could sit here and go through like 100 different data points that they released. Obviously, we don't have the full picture yet, but there's a lot of interesting stuff. They clearly touched a lot of the War Scrolls. They said that all the demons, you know, talked about to talk in sweeping generalizations. They said all the demons in general went up about 20 points. This includes the Plague Bearers. The Plague Bearers are 120 now, or 320 for 30. So their price went up. It sounds like. They did say that the flies went down, so they went down to 200 from 220. Thinking about some. Oh, they took the locust away. They changed the locust. It doesn't do mortal wounds on a 6+ to wound anymore. They get like bonus attacks if there's a hero, a Nurgle hero in it. So like they've actually went in and I say all this to say they've tinkered with the actual scrolls, a number of the scrolls.
Yeah, didn't a bunch of the demons also get the disgusting
the 5-up?
Resilient? Yeah, basically their rule from 40k.
Yep.
That they all are packing the 5-up damage prevention.
I was watching the stream today, the Zinch versus Zinch game, and they did confirm as well that the Beasts of Nurgle are 7 wounds. And
nice.
Their locust is +1 damage to all their attacks.
Yep.
They confirmed that on stream today, so I can talk about that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a number of things that they confirmed on the stream today. And on all 3 shows, they had nice tidbits from all of them.
Were you happy with the Blight King's change, Tom? We talked about it last week, and you got more or less all your wants. All your dreams have come true, Tom. They're conditional battle line now, and they're 160, and they went up to 4 wounds.
They did. I would say that they're more than just a scalpel. You know, before I had rated them as a scalpel. Like, you need to use them strategically. But now I think that they can also serve a little bit more as a general use troop at 160 for 5. That's 21 wounds. So that's definitely not a bad deal. So yeah, it was interesting. The Puskboils are fascinating. They're 2. You get 2 of them for 220. They're like 7 wounds a pop. They're full Blight Kings, full Rot Flies. They said they have both the demon and mortal keywords, so they'll be able to dip into both kind of worlds for bonuses and stuff like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah,
I mean, I was happy to see that they did end up with all those keywords. That's good. It's also good to see the Rot Bringers get more fleshed out.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see. Battalions are kind of the next big question. What's coming for battalions? There's tons of ways to tweak with the wheel. All Nurgle wizards, all your wizards that are keyword Nurgle are going to get a spell automatically that is altering the wheel in addition to their other spell. So they get kind of a free spell that will alter the wheel on a I don't know if it's a 7-up or 6-up. I don't remember. Anyways, so there's that. You can reset the wheel to any position, but that has to occur after the effect because a bunch of the effects are like at the start of the phase, and then there seems to be a character trait that lets you adjust the wheel up or down. I think it might be every hero phase. You can do that. It's either once a game or every hero phase. That's
how I heard it, or I remember it.
Yeah, I thought it was every hero phase, which obviously that's what we were talking about. You would need to really make this more competitive, is have some degree of control over what's going on.
Sure.
You
like the free tree?
Say what?
You like the free tree?
Yeah, I love. It'll be really interesting to see how that tree works out because there's some area denial that'll be associated with that. It works with some of their terrain, so. Depending on what the placement is, you may be able to put it near objectives, and like the one Nurgle wheel, you could potentially nuke off the trees, which would be interesting. from what we can tell at least. With the ability to place multiple trees through Horticulus or through, the battalion in Horticulus, or through earning like corruption points. They said the trees cost 7 corruption points, and you earn corruption points for having units in your deployment zone, units in their deployment zone, and units not near your trees. So all of those things will generate corruption points. So, and you can spend those to summon more trees or to summon other units. And they said on the stream today that was in multiples of 7. So it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. As I said, my plan is to get through my current, combined forces army of KO Fire Slayers, and then I'm probably going to switch back to Nurgle. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. It'd be really easy to go back to Mortal. I'd love to paint up some of the new models. Obviously, I may switch and just do my demons. I have a bunch of the models, and I don't mind picking up some of the new stuff. So that'll be fun. And the new the 3 Blight King battalion that I saw that they talked about today on the stream.
You mean 3
Guo? Yeah, 3 Guo. Which that I'm a sucker for, like the multiple Lord of Change battalion. And, we've talked about the Bloodthirster, the 4 Bloodthirster. This is the 3 Guo battalion.
Sure. I mean, I like 3 big monsters. As the originator of #3MagMeta, yeah, I'm very familiar with how much you love the...
Basically, you know what formation Ben Johnson's going to play.
Right. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Indeed. What's so fascinating about it is they said that it's keyword based. It's the Guo keyword, so that Roticulus can be included in the battalion. That's what they said on the stream today. And one of the fascinating things about that is that if that is indeed the case, you could include an exalted Guo in that battalion as well, because he has the right keyword. And so you could do like a base Guo, an exalted Guo, and you could do Reticulus as your 3. And the Exalted also has the Plague Wind spell. So the one that gets augmented by the spell that gets augmented by the battalion to do like 3d3 mortal wounds or 3d3 healing. And so if you keep those guys nearby, you could actually like shoot the spell through lines of Guos. Like you put Reticulus in the middle and you could shoot it back and forth to whoever needs healing. And hit
Are you
the
trying
other
to say
2.
Rodigus?
Rodigus, whatever. Reticulus. Rodigus, yeah, Rodigus.
You're just adding letters that don't exist in that guy's name. But
whatever. Sure. I haven't seen the work scroll, so it's all myth until I actually see the stuff in hand.
I would just like to say that I support the comment the comment that says, "Can you run 2 of the battalions? That way you can have a Guo duo." The tri-Guo duo.
Unfortunately, like it would be, you're already at like 1,200 and some points for the 3 in the battalion.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's a big game. Maybe a very large team game.
Yes. But why do 6 when you could almost do 7? And that's what matters. What I want to really know is what is the max size on the Puscoils? Because you buy them in 2s, they said. And I would love to know if you can buy them in 7s.
What's them?
Like the max is 7.
Sure.
Like you buy, we know you buy them in 2s. Yeah. They said that today. But are they going to max it at 6 or allow you to go up to the 7th and have like an incomplete battalion?
What's the Dracothian maximum? 6?
Oh, I don't know. Probably 4 or 6, maybe.
Brad, do you know off the top of your head?
My phone's charging in the other room.
It's okay. I'll pull it up real quick. I have the.
Because I imagine it's going to be the same. They're clearly filling the role of like the the sort of Dracothian guard.
Like the Fulminators. No. Not Fulminator. Fulminator?
Whatever. Tempestors, it doesn't matter. You're saying the individual thing. I'm saying the...
Holy shit. Do you guys know what the max unit size on those are?
12.
12! 12!
Well...
Could you...
I mean, it's just a silly number.
I'm pretty sure I actually have 12.
Oh, there you go.
Do you really?
Nice.
I probably do.
So 12 in a unit. That would be a very large, that you could have that and then your battle line and a hero. Anyway, so yeah, I guess it's not out of the wild to do 7 of these Puscoils. Because if you can, and since they're mortal keyworded, you could include that 7 is the magic number for the Plague Touched Warband to deploy in 7s, and when you do that, they get like the mortal wounds kickback, like when the enemy hits you on a 6+ to wound. So you could actually include those in the Plague Touched Warband, and that would be a very hilarious it would be ridiculous. If they did not mess with the Harbinger, which I suspect they did, if they didn't mess with the Harbinger, you would be at 4 up, 5 up, 5 up. And if there's a War Shrine, and then also a 6 up. So I can't imagine they left the Harbinger the same. So that'll be exciting to find out.
Mm-hmm. It's all good.
Yeah, so I'm excited.
Do you want to know what I'm most excited about, Tom?
What's that? Not hearing me complain?
Well, I mean, that's number 2. Completely honest, that's number 2. Yeah, thank God we didn't have, something horrible come out of this, because then it just would have been another day. But no. The thing I'm most excited about is that they showed for some of these things they're willing to correct through mass changes of a lot of the war scrolls and importing the 40K style rules with that. That means when the Slanesh release comes, baby, it's on. It's on. We're gonna fix all those crappy scrolls. I'm excited.
Neg 3 Rend. You excited for your Neg 3 Rend?
I am, buddy. I'm excited. That's what I say. So that's all this does is let me know that I don't have to suffer with these garbage war scrolls forever. Eventually, I'll get something good.
As for those that are interested, as an aside, they were talking about Glotkin, and they read his disgusting bulk ability or whatever. It's been the one that's like useless. It's unusable. Like you roll a d6 compared to the bravery. If it's above their bravery, it'd be -1. So like it only ever affected goblins on a 6 or something. Like it was just terrible. When they read it on the stream today, it was very different. It was like roll 2d6 every hero phase for nearby enemies, and if it's over their bravery, it projects a -1 to hit bubble. Which means that both Glotkin potentially and Bloab would project -1 to hit bubbles, which could be really interesting, especially if both of those are in a plague-touched warband. So, anyways,
you're running out of points quickly in that list.
That's like what, 700 points total?
I mean,
420 plus 260 plus 190 for the plague-touched warband. So it's actually.
Flies.
Oh no! Yeah, those 8 flies. You have to build around those 7, those 8. Yeah, exactly. The 880 in that list. That's pretty insane.
So here's what I want to ask.
So we'll see.
Brad, what do you think of all this overall? What do you think of Nurgle so far? Are you happy with what you've seen? Do you feel like it's going to be competitive?
I do. Part of the reason being that we'll get into later with the meta, that survivability is one of the ways to win lately. And as they were, I'm sure they'll be even better in the future with new and different units and different ways to ignore wounds. And we'll see at least one list in the Masters that is just masses of ignoring wounds for Nurgle, let alone the Witch Elf list. But massive ignoring wounds, move on to objectives and score. My question is going to be, well, can they do more than just that? And that's what we'll have to wait and see.
You mean, can Nurgle do that?
Can Nurgle do more than just walking onto objectives and not dying?
Yeah. It's a good call. I mean, what I would say is that from what we've seen, it seems to point towards quite a bit of offense, quite a bit more than we previously had. Because Plague Bearers and Plague Drones were definitely not killing things previously. So it'll be interesting to see with the book release what that looks like. So I agree. So that's Nurgle. We will cover more of Nurgle, obviously, when the new book drops. And we'll do an entire show dedicated to it. So worry not, folks. Okay. But that's not all. There's one more thing, indeed. Yes. Malign Portents. The timer's under 24 hours, folks.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever that means.
Let me say this. Depending on what we get and how quick we get it with all the Malign Portent stuff, if the need calls for it, I'll try to rustle up Tom to do a special show to talk about it at some point this weekend. If it's not enough, if it's just slow little bits of information once everything goes live, then we'll just cover it on the show next week. So
when is the open day? Is that this weekend? Like there's a Warhammer Studio Open or something this month sometime. Is that this weekend?
I don't have the events calendar in front of me. I can look. But I mean, the point being that, I mean, we're less than a day. It's tomorrow morning at like, what, 5 a.m. our time, 10 a.m. their time, I think, is when this clock runs out. that right?
I mean, I assumed that we'd have some stuff on the Twitch feed tomorrow. Like, I figured that we'd have some shows or whatnot in addition to the website updates. So,
yeah.
What we have been getting this last week are now we're getting like full animated character videos, which have just been fantastic. They revealed the last of the 4 heralds, which was a Stormcast that actually, like, I can totally get behind. Like, I saw this dude and I'm like, I love this guy. Like, somewhat lightly armored, dual hammer. Like, I'm in. And it was an architect, Vince. We talked about this. Do you remember when we saw the little architect symbol? We said maybe the Order Herald is an architect. We thought it was Free Guild, but indeed it was an architect for Sigmar.
There you go. There he is.
This dude has conversion written all over him.
Let me ask you a question, Tom.
Yeah.
If this is how Stormcast had looked originally, okay?
Yep.
Like, take this guy.
Yep.
He doesn't need to look exactly like this. Like, he has a lot of maybe mechanical elements which could or could not be there, but whatever.
Sure. Yep.
If this is how Stormcast had looked originally, would they have been received better?
I want to say yes, only because that's my reaction. But the reality is that I also recognize that the full armor Space Marine-esque look may have drawn some folks in that were not me. So
Sure.
I don't know.
It's an interesting thing because it's also a much more complicated paint than Mr. Full Armor guy, right? Like, the full armor aesthetic, like the Space Marine, is an easier hoppy hurdle when you're first starting.
Mass produced for new players.
Yep. Exactly. Like, because their ability to just go buy some like Retributor gold, right? Wash the whole thing and then pick out blue shoulder pads. They can do that.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And I agree. Like, yeah, like, so again, this guy appeals to me. Like, I see this dude and I'm like, I am in. Let's paint up this Stormcast army. So, yeah, I don't know.
His mustache is a thing to behold. Them chops, man. He is rocking them chops.
Yes, with authority, indeed.
I respect nice facial hair, and that's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that, and so this guy was the first video that we saw. So we see like a monk in each of the videos, like going to each of the heralds and like spying on them, basically. And we see this guy like trying to discern the portents in the heavens, and he's building a skull, like a Skullbane Manse.
Mm-hmm.
Which is awesome. Like, it's a great call out. I would love if they re-release that kit. I don't know that they actually will. But I have a number of conversions that I'd love to do with one, and I don't want to actually like
stop clicking your pen
mine
while you're thinking.
He's getting excited for it.
I know. I can tell how excited you are. Stop hitting your pen against the thing.
Like, I'm chomping at the bit some of the conversions that I could do with that thing. But needless to say, now we wait to see if that actually comes about.
It's such a classic terrain piece, and I feel like if you're going to go for this whole portents and omens and nonsense crap, it's a pretty great alignment of a terrain piece. People loved that thing, man. Looks good on tables too.
So we have a lot of old world terrain that people love. That among them, Death No Watch, stuff like that. So you know what people love about those, other than the old aesthetic, are all the skulls. Now, don't get me wrong, there are skulls everywhere on all of those terrain pieces.
Sure.
Do you know where skulls fit really well? Do you know where old architecture fits really well?
Shyish, the Realm of Death.
Shyish, the Realm of Death.
Sure.
So if there's ever a place for Witch Fate Tour and for all of that stuff to show up, I think it's actually in Shyish. And so I think there would be a compelling case for a re-release of that stuff as maybe echoes and memories of what once was.
Sure. I mean, or people could just be building crap like they used to. Like, if there's enough humans around now that they'll just, like, they're probably just building crap like they used to build crap.
Yep.
It's just sometimes also more fantastical, which is okay. That's fine.
Yep. And then all the skulls have a place.
Yeah, we can do both. We can all win. It's not an either or choice. It's just it's a taco girl discussion. We can do both. So there you go.
Indeed. So the character videos, they've released the first 3. We watched the dude build the Skull Vein Mance. We saw the War Queen like chump the Dark Oath chieftain, and call both the men and women of the hordes to join us. So here's for hoping that we get at least a new Marauder box. I doubt we will, but I'd love a one-off Marauder box in their aesthetic. Maybe even a team up with the Forge World for a War Mammoth re-release. I would definitely be in for something like that.
Boy, you are swinging for the parking lot.
Yeah.
Not even
Hey,
like that. You're not even, you're over the fence. You're going for the parking lot.
They said this is a big AOS year. So I'm just dreaming big.
Sure.
And then obviously my favorite image was the Goblin video that they did today.
Sure.
Because when it showed his dreams, they were like animated cartoons and they were adorable.
Well, so the Night of Shrouds will obviously come out tomorrow, and we'll actually get it. Like, that dude should talk. I hope he talks like a ring wraith.
Yeah, indeed.
He looks like a ring wraith. Why not just make him talk like one? Like, whatever, it's fine. Just do it. Don't fight it. Just let it happen.
Indeed. And so now the other big reveal, we have stuff coming tomorrow is going to be the big, like, whatever that is. But what was also significant, what caught my attention, was Coalescence is teaming up, the Neos, the community organized event, is teaming up with Malign Portents. And so the Coalescence event this year is going to be a Malign Portents event. So that's really exciting to see that continued partnership and that participation with the wider global community.
It's going to be an across the board thing. So,
yep.
There you go. Any other news?
No, we could go on for a while, but that's
sure.
It.
We got to actually talk about something else that we came to. I mean, look,
Indeed.
We're on the edge of a lot of stuff here.
The Masters lists have been submitted in our public now, which is what we're going to talk as our main segment.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed it is. So let's do some pick of the week. So, Brad, what would you like to share with everybody? What blog or podcast? What have you been listening to recently?
I've been listening to the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson.
Nice.
And then over the break, I watched a lot of Netflix, and the Unabomber Netflix movie special series or whatever was excellent. It was really good.
Awesome. Dude, I love Sanderson's a great writer, man. I'm a big fan of that guy. I like his Mistborn trilogy was I've always wanted to see something like that brought into a game. I love the magic of that world. That dude creates incredible magic systems. So yeah, I'm down with that. Really Tommy, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, friend of the show, Paul Krooner, did a video this last week on the AOS US tournament scene. And he had one of the folks, was it Joe maybe? One of the West Coast guys out kind of talking about their reflections on the AOS tournament scene. Obviously, it reflects a much more Western perspective on the competitive scene, but it was still an interesting show. And so I'd encourage folks, given our topic today, I'd encourage folks to check it out.
Sure, it was much more Western. They wore cowboy hats for the show. They had 6 guns on their side. They rode in on horses. It's very Western.
That's like West mean, right? Coast, not Midwest gaming is what I would say.
Oh.
Okay. Sorry. They were talking about Best Coast pairings. Let's go with that. They're talking a whole bunch about that and not what the Midwest does. But anyways, needless to say, it's worth kind of at least if you're not aware of kind of the full aspect of the competitive scene in the U.S., it's worth kind of engaging and checking it out. So I'd encourage folks to check out Paul's conversation on it.
So my shout out is going to be for our buddy Rob Symes and his Honest Wargamer project. He recently did a pretty large breakdown of each of the Masters lists, going in more detail than I think we're going to have time to today, just because he was able to sit there for like 2.5 hours and just deep dive on every single list and kind of talk about each unit. So if you want to go beyond, if you get to the end and you would like to learn more Starship Troopers style, click through to that link and you can have 2.5 more hours of discussion about these 16 lists, which are apparently the most important lists in the world right now. So, there you go. But it's a good episode. It's a lot of fun. And I have my personal favorites of these lists. But we're going to jump into them here in a minute. So let's talk about some hobby time. Brad, you mentioned that you've been having some hobby block. What's that? So has anything been on your desk? Have you been assembling anything, doing anything?
No.
Despite his embrace of the changer, the changer of ways, it is all static. It is just Siege.
Well, look,
I've been working on Shadespire a little bit, trying to get games in.
There you go.
I painted up a couple crews for Shadespire a while back. I need to paint my other two, and I'm going to paint my spare Corn team because I want to have another one. But otherwise, no. Been pretty stale. I'm kind of in hibernation mode, waiting for new stuff, waiting for inspiration. I'm gonna coast with my Zinch through at least Wapaka, and then we'll see what happens after Wapaka for maybe Holy Havoc and for sure Adepticon.
Sure. So here's my question: you've been playing a lot of Shadespire, and you've got all 4 crews, and I assume probably a couple decks you like for all 4. What has risen to the top for you as being like the thing you've enjoyed piloting the most?
Corn.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I'm having the most fun with Corn. I've won the most so far with the Sepulchral Guard, but because I haven't played against Corn, because I don't think people are playing them because they think they're bad. They're more finesse and they're more late game scoring. And one of the most popular crews is a pretty hard counter for them, the Orcs.
Yep.
But I'm playing liking Corn, and I think they're going to do well, even though coming out of the gate they were considered to be the worst crew.
Sure. Are you excited for the Skaven and for the Fire Slayers? Do you think they're gonna shake things up appropriately and add some more good options?
Yeah, I really hope the Skaven give us more of an anti-backboard edge force, because Corn. Another reason why we see so much of it is because Corn is not taking a lot, and they're the only ones that can catch you if you just rear board edge it.
Right.
So another good option for maybe ranged weapons. I don't know, because I know one guy's got a spear. I'm sure somebody's got some kind of throwing or shooting weapon, and then you've got shade, glass, darts, and I want to see more of that. That's what I want to see.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm very interested in to see how the Skaven play. That's I mean, duh. I love the rats, but yes, I'm pretty excited. I'm hoping they bring an appropriately unusual play style, as they always classically have. Tommy, what about you, buddy? What have you been working on?
Fire Slayers.
Fire Slayers, huh? Still, not surprising. That's gonna be Tom's answer for a long time. That's okay. I'm not gonna yell at him for that. That's all right. So
this is what I get for doing all this freehand. Like, that's all I'm going to say. Like, freehand, that was a mistake.
It was not. It was not. Yeah, God forbid you have an army that looks good. Yeah, boy, that was a mistake. That's why have an army you can be proud of. Why would you ever want to do that? That's silliness. So how goes it? Do you have your first batch of Volkites done?
No. I am base coating silver on the Volkites. Like, so all the skin is done.
There you go.
Mostly done. I know it's not. I have a little bit more work on the runes. Like the last pass on all the runes to up the contrast a little bit more. And then I'm doing base coats, and I have like 4 colors that I need to base coat through, and then I'm on number 2. Then I'll do some washes and a couple highlights. I'm not going to do a lot of highlights because these are going to be mass troops, and so I just give them. I can't ultra highlight everything. So
sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it's coming along. I'm hoping by the end of the week, maybe I'll have these 30 done. Maybe if I get enough time. The problem here, I'm just going to be honest. I should have taken the warning that I saw on Twitter when I watched Rhellion and Domus get Breath of the Wind. That's the problem here. Is that we got Zelda. We got a Switch this last Christmas, and man, That game just sucks you right in. It just eats hobby hours. Just eats them and spits them on out.
Sure.
So, yeah.
You gotta stay away from that. It's bad for you. Video
It's
games.
so true.
Video games. I like video games. I'm not worried about them causing violence or any of that nonsense. I'm not worried about addiction. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm just worried about all the lost hobby hours and those gray, sad, unpainted figures that video games create.
It spurs the creative juices. I was playing my paladin this afternoon on World of Warcraft. And I want to start another Stormcast army right now.
There you go. All right. Well, you've sold me. You've turned me right around. Now, how many hours are you going to keep playing that paladin before you make that Stormcast army?
No comment. but before I never make that Stormcast army, you mean?
Right. But it inspired you, and that's worth something, darn it. All right. So for me personally, I am finishing up the Necromunda crew. All the girls are done. So there's one of them right there. I'm pretty excited about all of them. And so now I have to build their display base. And so that's what this is. There you go.
That looks familiar.
It should, yeah. Well, I mean, some of it at least. There you go. So that's what we're that's what we're building up right now, is their little display base. And then I have to do their actual personal bases and stuff like that, and then they're done. So we're getting close. Should be able to finish them up. Should be able to finish this up by tomorrow. So I've got to my desk right now looks like you can't see it obviously, but believe me, everything below camera here is just a wreck, because it's all like this is everything. Like doing all this is like everything. It was like weathering pigments and oil paints and just everything. It all came out. So my desk is just looks like an explosion. But yeah, that's what I've been working on. So I will be very happy to have that done. Good Lord, that has been a road. So let's talk about the meta. Let's talk about how we currently see things. So before we even look at the masters lists, I was thinking, Brad, you kind of made a you kind of made a comment earlier about sort of the general meta right now and what it looks like. What are your thoughts, like the army composition and what's good, what's not there? So maybe both of you gentlemen could give some overall thoughts before we even talk about the masters list in specific. Maybe talk in general, right? Where you see things at right now. What's the essential elements? What's determining the presence of lists at a competitive level and what's not?
Well, the very first thing that we had in GHB 17 was the Horde discount, which I think accomplished what I assumed the goal was to get more models on the table, because we're seeing these lists with 30 Plague Bearers, 30 Plague Bearers, 30 Plague Bearers, or we're seeing 30 Eternal Guard, 30 Glade Guard, 20 Glade Guard. You're getting discounts on large units, 30 Bloodletters, 30 Bloodletters, 30 Bloodletters. You're getting discounts on large units. You're getting more bodies on the table. We have new 2017 scenarios that benefit having more models than your opponent. If you reach a certain threshold, you can auto cap. So the goal was to get more bodies on the table, and a good portion of the competitive lists have that in them, and so I think they accomplished that goal.
Yeah, I thought about that. Like it's interesting because when I look at stuff like the demon lists, Plague Bearers, the Bloodletters, the Horrors, I'm not sure those wouldn't have those even if the discount wasn't there. Like, that is to say, assume the old prices were the old prices. I'm not sure they wouldn't look the same. I don't know. I'm not saying they would or they wouldn't. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if the discount alone is the motivating factor for those lists. But some of the other ones where you start seeing like weird hordes pop up, I'm like, that's probably in there because of the discount, right? Like, that's why it went to 40 instead of being 220s or something like that, right?
Witch Elves, the Daughters of Cain. Like, that's an example where you're like, that's probably the discount carrying that weight.
Sure. Well, I don't know that you couldn't pack all that in without that, right?
Right.
Like, the math just actually doesn't work the same. Yeah, I mean, what about the presence of what do you think right now is the role of mobility slash yeah, let's just call it mobility in broad strokes, understood to mean any and all of movement related shenanigans.
Well, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
You know, one aspect I saw a really insightful comment about the Masters, where one person pointed out that there's really kind of like three categories that we see kind of popping up, that all the lists fit into at least one of these, if not two of them, and those being like heavy survivability, mortal wound saves, like some type of ward save, or hyper survivability. Two is some degree of mortal wound output or killing, like hyper killingness, some very strong killingness, and then finally, like high mobility, alternative movement stuff. And oftentimes it's some combination of those three factors that are generating many of these lists. And when you look across, that maps almost everything. And then bodies, lots and lots of bodies on top of all that. And it seems like that maps. And so I think that mobility is still to jump back to your question. I think mobility is important. But I don't see all of these lists having that kind of mobility.
No, there's a lot that don't.
Yeah.
That was hence why I asked the question, because people have been making a big deal out of this recently, but I see a lot of these lists that don't have any incredible mobility tricks. Brad, what's your read on that?
Well, that's the exact list that I've been playing for the last half of the year with Tzeentch, which is pretty much the first army list on our Masters list is Tony Moore's Change Host. It's got mobility in summoning, swapping, and splitting. It's got survivability in splitting, and it has output in the best spells and ranged damage potentially in the game if you actually have a chance to get it off.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, what you're saying, a combination of those is probably some of the best.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just jump into this. Let's take a look, shall we? So I'm going to go ahead and share these up here. Let's take a look at these Masters Army lists. So we got 16 lists. Now we probably don't have the time to deep dive into every one of them, but we can talk about each of them. And What I'll say is, I would just want to caveat at the beginning, because anytime we talk about tournament stuff and competitive stuff, some people's get bristly. Okay. And so what I'll say is, it's not like we're saying these are the only lists that exist. We're talking about 16 interesting lists that people are bringing to a singular event.
And some of them, let's be very clear about this. Some of them are bringing lists that aren't, in a sense, like they either are the hyper competitive, but they're skewed towards hyper competitive play. Okay. Sure. And we'll talk about this as we look through. Like Gary Percival built his KO list very intentionally, because he knew the other types of lists that were going to be here.
Sure.
In a general tournament, that wouldn't be necessarily what he takes. And in fact, he hasn't ever taken this to any of those other, and we'll talk about that. Like why certain decisions have been made for some lists rather than others.
So let me give my initial thoughts, and you can all tell me, and you can all either say why I'm wrong or agree or whatever. But so overall here, as we see, 4 pages of lists. Sorry, 4 per page, 16 lists. Overall, what I found interesting was there's actually quite a lot of variance here. Okay, in the lists, I actually found this to be quite varied. There's no. When I think of like Magic, when I look at the top 8 or the high end decks, many of them tend to look very similar and contain mostly the same cards. You can often see a top of a tournament, top 16 or something with like, basically everything breaking down into 3 or 4 primarily similar decks. That's not the case here at all. But there are conspicuous absences, i.e. the complete lack of death from this at all. 1 destruction, right? So, I mean, there's certainly an absence felt here, though I think we all believe that that the deaths, the void of death here will not be something that lasts for too much longer. But my overall thought was I thought this looked like a pretty nice amount of variance of what's here. I mean, what did you guys think? Did this feel too samey to you, or did you see like, oh, yeah, there's actually people bringing some interesting things here?
If you were to look at the Grand Alliance headlines and that was it, it'd be pretty disappointing. But once you actually get into the lists, they are quite different. Even the Tzeentch lists themselves are pretty different from each other.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I was very excited about one of these Tzeentch lists, which we'll talk about as we go through it. I loved it.
It's funny, Vince, because you just told me about what kind of show I should run.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest, when I first read through this Masters list, I felt like somebody had hacked my computer and robbed all of my Word document files on army building lists. If you go on TGA and look at like my post history, you can see most of these lists having showed up at various points in my post history.
That is that is the least humble brag I have ever heard.
No, I'm not trying to be humble. Like, don't misunderstand me. Like, and let me just say this: there are a lot of different decisions that have been made here. But what I'm saying is that it doesn't surprise me that these lists are on the Masters list. Like, all of them have a large suite of abilities. So let me be like my we've talked about this. I talked about how I think Tzeentch could probably do my Nurgle list better than my Nurgle list could do that now. Guess what? That's on here.
Sure.
That Fatesworn, like basically almost a direct port with much stronger magic, is on here as one of those Fatesworn lists.
Sure.
And like, yeah. And so I could go on. Again, I'm not trying to, like, this isn't me bragging. This is me pointing out that, like, some of this isn't surprising.
It's you bragging. It's you hipstering. I get it. It's all good, man.
No, but like Murder Host, Vanguard Wing. Like, we were talking about this. We were talking about Vanguard Wing last April.
Sure.
We talked about Change Host last February.
I know.
Like, none of this is surprising.
Sure.
I mean, some of it is. Wanderers, I didn't see that one coming.
I am going to say there are surprising lists on here. I refuse to say there are no surprises on here.
No. There are outliers. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of what you would expect to see is certainly here. That's what I would say.
There you go.
Anthony in the chat. It's probably why I didn't win the Australian Masters. Tom didn't post a free people's list.
There you go. If only Tom had made a free people's list.
Hey, Anthony, there's probably a reason why I didn't make a free people's list.
Oh. All right. So, Brad, did you have any high-level thoughts, looking down? I completely agree with your read. When you get down below the headlines, there's a lot of variance here. I think you're exactly right.
I love the Khorne Bloodbound list with the Gaunt Summoner.
Oh, yes. If there was ever a sign of, a model that's just like, well, he's an answer to something that I need. So there it is.
The good old ever-chosen keyword.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All
Doing
right,
some work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's jump into these lists. Obviously, we already mentioned it. Tony Moore, this is our Change Host list. So, Brad, you want to take this one? You've been running this for a while. You want to kind of give the high level rundown of this and why this is on here and why it's a pretty darn good list.
Without going into every spell on the list and every artifact, it's Kairos, Lord of Change, Herald of Tzeentch, Blue Scribes, Changeling, Gaunt Summoner. So right off the bat, you've got all 6 characters. Pink horrors, 10 blue, 30 brims. This is different from the list that I run in that I take 1 unit of brims, 1 unit of blues at minimum size down at the bottom of the list, and then I put the rest into summoning, and I do lots of splitting in my games, and it gives me the option of doing a vortex, which I do maybe in 1 or 2 out of 5 games in a tournament, or just splitting a whole lot more. I can do 5 units because I have 250 points of summoning when I play. I could do 5 units of blues, whereas he's gone with the upfront brims. He's got more of a screen that he can fill into with his blues, refill the units that he already has while focusing on his magic. So I mean, you've got 9 individual casters in the list. 1, 2, 3 of them can cast 2 spells a turn. So I mean, you're looking at 12 spells a turn. It's quite daunting when you get held up by the splitting and then just magicked off the table. So.
Yeah, that is definitely magical dominance. And the other thing that interests me about this list, although they're not high quality bodies, he is generating 86 bodies on the table. So it's not shabby, right? He's got a fair amount of dudes.
It takes actually experiencing it to see how bad it is, because okay, you get the pinks down 5 or 6 models. Let me just take my destiny dice and swap in a 1. Now they're back at full strength, but oh wait, I still get to split. So they're refilling and splitting and then refilling the split units.
Yep.
So it doesn't have the raw survivability, but it has the lasting power because it just comes back.
It lasts long enough.
Yeah. It's really interesting just because there is simply a reality of how much you can kill, especially as you said, under that magical firepower, right? Like your best tools are getting blunted pretty fast by the hail of magic that's coming at you. Yeah. It's a strong list. I mean, there's no doubt. I don't think we need to go too deep on Change Host. I think this is one of the very big known quantities in the meta. It doesn't surprise me to see one in here. I didn't none of this threw me too hard. When I looked at all of his choices, I was like, yeah, okay. It seems like a perfectly valid way to go with it. All right. Let's talk about let's go to Dan's list. A couple interesting things jumped out at me about Dan's list. One, he went for the Chaos Allegiance, obviously because he wanted Cunning Deceiver, I would assume, right? That would be the reason to go for that, as opposed to being in any kind of Khorne-based allegiance.
What would he benefit from Khorne?
I mean, just
I think he's been taking the Chaos Allegiance for all of his success with this list in the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. It's more a point of, I don't disagree with you. I'm calling it out because it's more of a point of, I don't think he would benefit that greatly, which is strange. I think when you come at it from the perspective of not doing it, it's not like he's taking something that's breaking his ability to take allegiance, right? It's more of just on benefit.
The weight of Cunning
isn't strong enough to overwhelm Cunning Deceiver, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
For a melee running army. Yep.
Right. And that's just interesting to me. I love that the Blood Throne, the awful, awful, awful Blood Throne, that worthless hunk of bronze, is in this army because obviously yes, it's the reason it's here is because the Murder Host requires a Bloodletter hero, right? And he has the Blood Throne is a Bloodletter hero. And it has more wounds than the regular Bloodletter hero. So there you go.
When I was on my way home from Midwest Meltdown, I was writing Murder Host lists, and that's what I had in there. Blood Throne.
Yep.
Yeah.
More wounds, faster movement. Keep up with the units.
It's the funniest thing to me that garbage unit, which on paper, admitted, in the void, that is a garbage unit. Okay. It just is. That being said, it's hilarious to me. I love when things like this happen where, because of a larger synergistic list, garbage units have value. But yeah, this dude's at max Murder Host with the 8 units with the Flesh Hounds and the Bloodletters. He's 3-drop. I love all them Flesh Hounds. He's obviously steering somewhat left into the Tzeentch meta because all those Flesh Hounds can obviously, run around and use their collars and such. So, yeah. What do you gentlemen think of this one?
It's Murder Host. Sure. It's 3-drop. Which that's a bold move with Murder Host. And what I mean by that is I probably would have dropped the Khorne Lord on Demonic Mount and went 2-drop just because drop and 3-drop, as we'll see in this list, is significant. For example, that Tzeentch list that we just covered is a 3-drop. And so it had the Murder Host been 2-drop, he would have gotten that choice of first turn to run across the table. But because he went 3-drop, he doesn't get that. Dan doesn't get that choice.
I I originally agreed with exactly that, but I was
Okay.
looking into it and talking to my buddy Jake about this list, and I think that the Lord on the Demonic Mount is almost the most interesting part, because I think one of the weaker scenarios for the murder host could potentially be duality, or they are playing 2016 and 2017 scenarios, so they could be playing 3 places of power. So you need even more characters. And that character is pretty survivable, definitely more so than normal bloodletter heroes. So if they get thrown 3 places of power, which I think would be an awesome wrench thrown into the scenarios for Ben's tournament,
I agree.
I think he would be a really good choice for that scenario.
That's a good call.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally agree, and I've been a big backer of the Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount for a while. I think he punches above his weight at 140.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and that's
certainly
the
worth
beguiling gem.
Yes, he's worth every penny of that 140.
Sure. I'm not sure the Khorne is the best use of him, but he's still more survivable than a lot of other equal pointed guys.
And he has a mortal wound save too.
Yes, he does. Yeah, built-in mortal wound save. So, yep.
And I think the beguiling gem. Well, no, it's another combat savior. I think it's -1 to hit in close combat.
I think that's right. Yeah. Yep. But again, more survivability, right? Like if he's standing on the 3 places of power or the duality of death and he's just sitting there, right? Then that can be like standing there for 1 more turn, surviving 1 more turn can often be a huge number of points, right?
Yeah, and for duality, just as a note, he's a non-monster, which means he's going to get the healing as a non-monster on duality, and he has the movement to actually get onto the point with a run turn 1.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he could realistically run him on 1, the Blood Throne on the other, with their movements. So yeah, I could see it.
All right, Gary Percival. Now, Tom, I know this is a list close to your heart because I know you've talked to Gary a lot about KO. So
I have. Gary and I have interacted quite a bit as KO players, and he actually came to me with this list and said, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think?" And I disagreed with him. So what he's went for. So this is a variant on the standard KO list. What has been added to this list? Is Gary has added the Etheric Navigator, so a 3rd hero, and he's also added the Iron Sky Command. He's added the Navigator because the Iron Sky Command requires it. So he has 240 points invested in this army simply to be a 1-drop. He could spend those 240 points on 6 engine riggers. He could spend it on 3 more riggers as a runner unit, and then also upgrade one of those company units to 20. And then so of the chemists, like the 20 jump out and they get the light skyhook buff for 12 skyhook shots, and he would still be 2-drop. So he spent 240 points to be a 1-drop army. I don't know that I can go along with that. Now, that said, I think he's going to do fine because he went with a 1-drop. He has less reliable, he's very reliant on get the dice landing key characters in those, essential matchups. So I think about Tony Moore. Tony Moore has a 96% win ratio with his allegiance, his Zinch list that we just reviewed. The one that Rhellion was talking about, and the only people that he's lost against is Gary playing Gary's KO. So I think Gary has a very strong offering here, but the problem is that he's actually slimmed out some of his DPS, especially by dropping those company. Because in that matchup, by the way, with Zinch, the 20 company drop out, then you hit them with the chemist buff, and they'll put out 14 to 16 wounds at -2 rend really easily, on average. And that could range all the way up to 21 or all the way down to 7. And so that KO unit or one of those company units becomes a great Alpha Strike unit with just 1 more set of 120 points invested into him. I don't know if he has the punch in order to assassinate enough strategic targets in a matchup, for example, versus Tony again. I don't know. I've run the numbers and I don't feel comfortable with those odds, is what I would say. That said, him being, KO is all about getting the drop on your opponent.
Does he lose duality of death or 3 places in some cases?
Not at all. Not at all. because he can pop out and assassinate a number of heroes right out of the gate. And what I would do if I were him is he would probably like I would anticipate he would maybe hero phase move up to one of the points, maybe. No, probably airdrop onto one of the points, spit out a bunch of heroes, leave that point, and like hero phase and then full move to the other point. And so he could actually potentially claim both. He could threaten both. Not too difficult. There is a 36-inch gap between those 2 points, though. So it would be a difficult move, but I think you could still pull it off, is what I would say. That said, he has the range that he could camp one and then just shoot anything off the other point that comes near. That's also a possibility.
Sure. Go for a little position 1-eye type of thing.
Right. Yeah. If it were me, I probably would have dropped the command, the Iron Sky command, and I would have dropped the navigator and picked up 6 more riggers. Either 6 more riggers, or I would have picked up 3 riggers and probably 10 company, which would have given him a better alpha strike, and it would have given him a counter strike when he is charged. That first unit of engine rigger is going to get wiped out. But if you had a second unit of 6 backing up, you would have a counter charge. So go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
Well, I was just saying I haven't played much against these guys, and it's one of the things that I'm going to practice the most against before Adepticon, because we're starting to get them in our club, this type of list, the clown card type of list. So if somebody else wasn't going to do it, I almost bought it myself. So
Jake's been running it, hasn't he?
Yeah, I haven't played him yet because I was sick over the New Year, and I'm going to Germany this weekend. But I'll get practicing against it soon. And he and I talked about it, and I said, "Are you doing KO?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, good," because I had my finger over the button to buy a KO army.
Yeah. We played Jake and Sean at the Holy Havoc, and after our game, he's like, "Yeah," we started talking KO, and he was like, "Yeah, I think there's some potential here." Yeah, no, they're good. They're good. Yeah, I think Gary has a good shot of going all the way. I think that he is going to be susceptible to weak numbers and the double turn, is what I would say. What he doesn't have by gaining 1 drop, what he doesn't have is he doesn't have a counter assault force. You have to write off those 9 engine riggers that charge in first, because they will get wiped out. The question is in that move between turn 2 to turn 3, do you have another hammer to come in? Sure. And if you ran like a unit of 6 engine riggers, like if you dropped those 240, picked up 6 more engine riggers with no grapples, that would give like you the opportunity to deploy and then charge in that second group. And you would have as many saws and guns in that group as the 9, because the 9 is running 3 grapples.
Sure.
And so the second group would be as punchy as the first. So anyways, I think Gary will do fine though.
There are a couple extreme survival armies in this list of armies that are almost too survivable and not enough in the offensive category, where I think he might have some really bad matchups against, and it'll be like it always does. It could come down to matchups, and it'll be interesting to see if he can take out some of those lists.
Yep.
Like I'm thinking the Nurgle, like when you talk about that, like the Nurgle matchup is going to be difficult. I think obviously the Fire Slayer matchup is always going to be based on that turn 1 to turn 2. Gary went up against that almost identical Fire Slayer list at Blood and Glory and lost to it. You can see that one on the stream.
All right. Let's keep moving. Let's talk about my favorite list on the first page. Which is Chris's list here. Allegiance Order, rocking Alariel the Everqueen, a Dragon Lord, a Rune Lord, a Rune Lord, a Rune Lord.
I don't know what's the big deal about that. Let me just say from the outset, I'm glad somebody has finally discovered the 40 warriors with 2-handed weapons plus Rune Lord, which is the
unit with neg-2 rend.
Yeah, a 40 model, a 40 attack, neg-2 rend unit. Let me just, for 360 points.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear about that. That is not a bad buy. And you can get that in allies. Just saying. For Fire Slayers or KO.
Totally true. And then some skinks, some sisters, and some bolt throwers.
Yep.
So I love this list. This is just like a wonderful psychotic combination of a bunch of individually interesting and good things with a lot of little tiny synergies, like being able to buff Alariel into a sort of kill machine, in a lot of different ways, and being able to the little warrior rune lord combination. It has like little packs of combos that I particularly like.
Well, this is a variant of Byron's list that won the World GT. Like, if you look at Byron's, it was.
That's a stretch. I don't disagree with you that there are some similarities, but like being that there's a Dragon Lord, a Lore Master, and skinks and stuff.
Yep.
But we're still like the inclusion of Ilario is a major pivot. Throwing a 600-point hero in,
right?
Not just
Indeed.
It's basically the same list. Whoa.
No.
To me, the only similarity is that Byron has ruined Chris's chances to sneak up on anybody with this list.
Yeah.
Because everybody kind of realizes now that there are synergies and just mixed what you would think is almost a hodgepodge army, but in reality, some of this stuff works well together. And if you really just stick to your game plan, you could probably beat something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, I love the Ilario plus Lore Master plus Sisters of Thorn combination. Like, what happens when she gets buffed up with those things. Obviously, we talked about the Lore Master, the Rune Lord and the Warriors. Just, I think there's a lot of fun little things there. And I'm glad to see somebody taking bolt throwers, which I think are actually really good.
I just think of how many times I've either killed or lost Ilario on the first turn.
Oh, sure.
For myself or against. And it's just, I don't know if there's enough in this army to really work with her without being Sylvaneth Allegiance for the extra spell. It kind of hurts.
And you're gonna lose, you lose any hope of priority with this army, on first turn.
Absolutely,
you are at the mercy of the other player.
Yes, 100%. This is an army that just says nope. You decide.
Yeah.
Right?
And so the Tzeentch for the KO list would run rough shot and top a 1 over this list.
Well, one has to assume though that Chris is going to know that he's against that and at least deploy in some way to stop that. Hence using the skinks and stuff like that and the warriors and things like this in ways that are hopefully not boneheaded. There are ways to set up multiple chaff walls that
but if you look at his trait, for example, he took legendary fighter, so he didn't take the inspiring battle shock immunity.
Mm-hmm.
So the Gaunt Summoner is going to delete that warrior unit at the top of 1.
Sure.
So they're just gone. And then probably Ilario and or the Dragon Lord are just going to get deleted with mortal wounds off the table.
Well, I mean, it's worth pointing out that thus far the only Gaunt Summoner we've seen doesn't have a Balewind at his back, right?
Who?
Well, he does have 140 points.
Sure,
yeah, Tony
right.
If he needs one.
I forgot. Yes, he does have 140 summoning. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah, if he needs one, he has one. That's the point.
Right. Yep. I forgot he had the 140 summoning. Okay.
Even the Corn list has 100 points for the Gaunt Summoner to get a Balewind.
All right. Let's keep moving.
Yep.
Tzeentch Allegiance number 2, and my favorite Tzeentch Allegiance in here, because obviously this one's rocking the Fatesworn. So still with the 2 Gaunt Summoners for the price of 1. Well, not really, but there's just 2 Gaunt Summoners here, as well as a Sail. This is what you were talking about, the variant on your old list, Tom, of 27, Tzeentch Chaos Warriors. They can be hurled around by Sail. Marauders just to be bodies.
Yep.
I love the inclusion of this. Oh, go ahead.
Technically, this list is illegal. I hate to be the one to point it out. You can't deploy those Marauders in under that number. You can't deploy a unit of 9. According to the FAQ. That's you can't do that. You'd have to go to 18 if you wanted to get that bonus for deploying in multiples of 9. Because that's under the minimum. It might just
be a typo because the other 2 units are listed as 10, and I don't see why, if he was trying to do it, he would only do it to 1, if not 3. So it might just be a typo.
Yep, and it probably is.
I'm going to say probably typo. Yeah, just because obviously the Warriors and the Knights are the ones who it matters to be in the multiple of 9. The Marauders, it's irrelevantly stupid. Who cares?
Yeah, they don't need a word save.
No.
Another word save. Let me point that out because he does have the War Shrine.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, like I said, I think that Tzeentch can do my list better, and I think this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I like this list a lot. I love being able to hurl the knights around, being able to hurl the warriors around. There's a lot of alpha blocking of like taking objectives or pinning people in here with extremely tough units. Like 27 Tzeentch Chaos Warriors buffed by that War Shrine and say the Sorcerer Lord is a nightmare, right? Like that is a very, very, very tough unit. So
yeah, and I mean the reality here is that this is a 2-drop army. And so what would happen turn 1 in like in most of your objectives is he will largely be able to put that Chaos Warrior unit, probably. I don't want to say he would certainly be able to put it anywhere on the table. Sale's still aiming at a 7 on that teleport with a reroll on his thing, and he's not a Tzeentch caster, so you can't use Fate dice for his spells.
He still has a once per game 3 die, doesn't he?
No, they changed it to a reroll failed cast. And so, like, he had a reliable, and now it's gone. And so, like, I mean, you have better than a 50% chance with a reroll to land that, to land those Chaos Warriors anywhere on the table. And then those Knights can run and sit on a point. So realistically, like, you could get into 2 points and then have the backfield capped with your stuff. And then Balewind turn 1 on one of the Gaunt Summoners. Probably one of them with Familiars, maybe for the extra +1 to cast. I don't know. Needless to say, whatever they decide to do, and pick off units. I mean, I think it's a strong list. What I would say is what this lacks, by the way, for my Nurgle list is penalties to hit. And penalties to hit the units, which is part of those survivability. And then the other thing that it lacks is it actually lacks. And this is a really funny part, the kickback of the mortal wounds on the warriors themselves. Like a big part of the way my list worked is that as things attack the warriors, they would reflect back mortal wounds. And this that's a function of the Plague Touch Warband, not this. Now he has all of the Tzeentch casting to make up those mortal wound difference. So in some sense it's better because he can target, he can focus fire those mortal wounds. But that is the difference between these two lists. So I don't know.
He doesn't have that much magic though. He's got Bolt of Tzeentch, and that's it.
Right.
So it's not that much offensive magic. He does have defensive magic though, which makes the opposite even that much worse. His Shield of Fate is amazing, especially on those warriors who I think can reroll certain saves. But now you can put that on a different unit. Now they can reroll 1s, 2s, and 3s for their save. It's just gross.
Well, the Sorcerer Lord is going to so. First of all, those warriors are going to stay at reroll 1s to save until they drop under 20 models. He has a reroll 1s to save from the Sorcerer Lord, and the Sorcerer Lord spell that he's going to cast is a reroll hits and wounds and saves of 1.
Well, okay? I mean,
and then the War Shrine will also hand out a reroll all failed saves.
Correct.
So I mean, he can make almost everything here rerolling saves or rerolling saves of 1.
Yep. It's one of the things I actually don't like about the list. I think it's almost a little overkill in that regard, as well as having 2 Gaunt Summoners, where I think those points could be better spent on something else.
He is very gilded on the lily of re-rolling armor saves. Like, it's absolutely true.
I think the weak... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, he has 3 different ways, not counting the built-in way, to, like, say, make the Chaos Warriors re-roll their saves. Yep. Right?
Yeah, I think if there is... he's, gilded the lily, in a sense, too much on units. The ones that I think are the waste is the War Shrine. I think the War Shrine's not doing enough in this list. That's 180 points that could go to something more punchy. Like what I would love to have seen is something like the Ogre Thaumaturge in this list, because he's punchy, he's a high wound hero, he has a nice D6 mortal wound spell. That would have went a long way, and then he could have taken some of the remaining points and either, I don't know. I agree. There's too much defense here.
I mean, it's interesting. Go ahead, Brad.
I was going to say, if I'm not playing Change Host, for me, the name of the game is unique mortal wound spells, and the Thaumaturge is another unique mortal wound spell.
Yep. Fully agree.
Yeah, it's interesting because his whole list, all of his offensive units, obviously are all packing rend, but at the same time, yes, I agree with that lack of the sort of mortal wound generation you're describing.
I think the balance would almost be perfect with the incredible survivability if you had a couple of more mortal wound casters in the backfield.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. Good.
Let's talk about Nikki's list and the Wanderers. That's right. We got some Wanderers. Who wants to take this one? Because I am out of my depth here.
Nomad Prince, Spellweaver, 3-Way Watchers, which are a lot of shooting. 30 Eternal Guard, which is pretty much his only kind of sit and hold an objective unit. 30 Glade Guard, 20 Glade Guard, 10 Glade Guard, 5 Sisters, 5 Wild Riders, and the Waystone Pathfinder formation, which is, I think, the one that lets him pick units up and redeploy them off board edges? Or is that just the...
that's the Allegiance. It lets him deploy off table. That's the key, is that like at the beginning of the game, he deploys off table and he can bring him in on any edge. And so, like, this is a 1-drop army where he can deploy anything he wants off table and can teleport any of the edges. Supreme mobility.
Unfortunately, nothing in the list actually scares me, though. So, I mean, he can go anywhere, but I don't know if there's enough punch to actually do anything once he gets there. He can snipe a few characters, but I don't know if it doesn't really have the lasting power and the offensive or survivability once that trick is spent. Because I mean, he can leave and go somewhere else, but I mean, you have to stay somewhere and capture objectives.
Yeah, he'll never shift those 27 Chaos Warriors in the prior list. Like, they would never move. They would never budge. Because they would be permanent 3-up reroll 1s on everything. And then 5-up on Mortal Wounds and another 6-up save and another 6-up save. So they're never, like, nothing here can shift that unit.
That list actually could be a decent opponent for some of the other normal Demons of Tzeentch lists. Maybe not beat them, but I think, like, this list is one of the things I would look at and be like, that's kind of gross when facing it with my change host, because just massive shooting is in my opinion one of the weaknesses of that list.
Yeah, I mean, 3-Way Watchers are very scary, right? Like, that guy is a tremendously good hero, and that is a heck of a lot of snipe shooting, right? That can wander on from anywhere. Like, they're going to be in range. They're going to have all of their shots, right?
Yep. Yeah, like, again, but there's just no rend, really, like, other than those couple heroes have neg 1 rend on the bows. And then the Glade Guard get a once per game neg 3. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Glade Guard get a once per game, get neg 3. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it's 60 Glade Guard who can all trigger that. Like, that's not a small amount of neg 3 rend.
I mean, how much stuff? 4-ups with 2 shots each if they're over 20 models, right? So you're at 50, 100, 110 shots. So 110, 55 will hit. 22.5 are going to actually wound with neg 3 rend. Okay, they'll kill.
They go to 3-up. The 20-pack and the 30-pack are at 3-up, 4-up.
Oh, 3-up, 4-up. Okay,
because they get plus 1 hit, yeah.
So 60 are 66 or so, 68, and then half of those, so 34. Awesome. 34 are going to wound. They're going to put those wounds on something, and it's going to die. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of constant shooting. It deals with low armor chaff really well, and they can turn and just eliminate that one very hard thing. Like, they will shoot it down. I mean, it should also be stated that don't forget that Nomad's, like, generic command ability that he has.
Yep.
Is the reroll hit rolls of 1 for Wanderer units around him. Right. So, like, you know, he actually can get those hitting pretty decently. Like, those Glade Guards suddenly are on like 3-up reroll 1s.
But if they're having to teleport around, I mean, okay.
And again, they're coming in. I would think the way he would play this would be to bring them in exactly so they're where they want to be to kill the thing they need to kill right there. Right. Yeah. Like, they're there. They're buffed. Well, I don't know. Then he's not there in the hero phase, so I guess that's harder for the command thing. No, because the way the Nomads... I think the way that the Nomads things work is as long as the Nomad is there, he can trigger it, and then I think it rides for the turn. Yes, because his buff is checked. The Nomad's buff is checked upon the attack. not upon the activation.
But he has to be on the table. Like, so the first turn he comes in, he can't trigger it. Because he comes in.
I mean, he could. Sure, he could, because he could be just on a corner. You could deploy him normally on a back corner. So he has access to leap 2 board lengths, right? Just using the normal ability. So he could activate and then leap, and then the other guys walk on. And as long as when they shoot, they're within 8 inches of him, they'll trigger the reroll 1s. Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe.
Again,
like, what do they do against Fire Slayers that are off table? That, like, I don't know. Yeah,
I'm not saying it's a win all. I'm just saying, like, there are interesting things this list is doing. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Yeah. The Wanderers list is neat. I was really happy to see this. This is the kind of stuff that I like to see. Like, and again, it's why you can't just say, oh, everything's order. Well, okay. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of order armies and a lot of chaos armies, but that's a little too rolled up. So next up is the Vanguard wing. Who'd like to talk about this broke stuff? I'm not touching this thing. This thing is list poison. Go ahead.
It is a little different from what he ran before. It's the Lord Castellant, Lord Relictor, Hurricanum, Celestial Hurricanum, 30 Liberators, 5 Liberators, 5 Judicators, 3 Prosecutors, times 3 with the Vanguard wing, which lets that big block of 30 Liberators teleport in and out and wherever it wants based on the location of the Prosecutors. One thing I'm interested in seeing, I think he's counting on Bless Weapons stacking, and I'm not sure that it does. I don't know how Ben ruled it, or if he's just going for redundancy, or if he's putting it on maybe on the Hurricanum, which I think is a shooting attack, maybe on something else. But I don't think he can put it on the Liberators 3 times, and if he rolls a 6, he gets 3 times.
Are you sure?
Effect.
Because
no, I'm not sure. I just don't think it does.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that each ability would trigger independently, and it just adds an extra attack, because any one attack can't generate additional attacks. So after an attack has generated additional attacks, those additional attacks can't generate attacks. That's what the wording on Rule 1 is.
Well, I'm looking at the FAQ where it says, when the word any is used for the criteria of any ability, does it mean the ability is only applied once? And the answer is yes, it's only applied once, no matter how many times the criteria are fulfilled.
And where is any used in the description? Do you know?
Of the actual ability, I don't.
Yeah. Okay, let me pull it up real quick. Yeah, because that's talking about the wording on the abilities themselves. I believe it does stack. What surprised me was actually that he went with the 3rd Relictor. And not, I mean, he doesn't have the points for it, probably. That's probably why. Because I'm surprised he didn't go for a Celestin in place of the 3rd Relictor, but I think it's probably because he didn't have the points for it.
Celestin is, I think, 120.
He's 100, and he would have been 20 over here. That's the problem.
I think he maybe could have swapped a Javelin unit for a Hammer unit. I think those might still be 80. I think maybe that would have been worth it.
Yeah, I mean, because that extra +1 would have moved on, like, heroes, on the Fell the Tyrants. Like, when those libs are hitting anything with, like, 5 wounds or 4 wounds or more or whatever, they would have been, like, 3 up to proc all of their special stuff, which would have been insane.
And while you're looking up that, the strength of the army is being able to pretty much go wherever it wants, into and out of combat. It can teleport into combat, so it can daisy chain through your lines if you leave enough space and get to your characters or get to your large monsters. So Bless Weapons triggers on 6s or more, so you're getting +1 to hit models with 5 wounds, +1 to hit from the Hurricanum, and I think that's it.
So Bless Weapon is, so here's...
By the way, Tom, Gary says that that the Navigator is integral and not attacks.
It is such axe. Shut up, Gary. That thing is worthless, and you know it.
I think he's his tough hero for Duality of Death. That's what I think. Also, he also clarified that Ben ruled it doesn't stack.
Yeah. Before you go any further, Ben ruled it does not stack. Really, when it comes down to it, that's really all that matters is what the TO rules.
Yeah,
of course.
Which is interesting if he ruled it that it does not stack, but then a few lists later, he ruled that the Cauldron of Blood does stack.
Right. Well, any is not in. It's not in the front part of the phrase. It's in the back part of the phrase on Cauldron.
I don't get him started, Brad.
Yeah.
It's like
Yep. Sorry.
He and I have had it out on Twitter about this before.
We have
in a friendly manner, but we both disagree about this as well. And again, it just comes down to, I don't know if I would buy an army relying on a rule that might get overruled by a tournament organizer between events. So,
which is why I didn't buy that army. I didn't build that army. I own that army, but why I didn't build it was that exactly the reason. Yeah,
I build and own a lot of armies for tournaments throughout the year, and that's something I wouldn't even do. Is if I'm not sure something is going to be consistently ruled a certain way.
Yep.
From January to December.
Yep. No, I mean, my personal we'll talk about it when we get there, but I agree. I come down on the side of with you, Brad, 100% on this. Tom and I have also had a row about this. Of course, Tom does linguistics for a living. That's what he's getting his doctorate in. So what a shocker that he has a really deep linguistic argument. Huh? That's so weird. Anyway,
but
all right.
I will say
So
this. The wording on blessed weapons, though, it does say if any attacks or any hits are 6 or more, which would suggest that by GW's 1 or more, if 1 or more hits are 6 or more, it generates an additional attack, which is really interesting. Which might even suggest that can only ever proc once for a unit.
But yeah, I mean, even
that way,
then he's got to be using the blessed weapons for redundancy, right? Like that's what it is. So he can always get it off despite his hero. He doesn't. There's no linchpin that somebody can just kill out one relictor and shut that off.
And he absolutely is the quality of player that would clear every single little trick with a tournament organizer before trying to take it to the Masters.
Sure.
Yep.
All right. So next Zinch list, again, third Zinch list, but again, very, very different Zinch list, I think, than the other ones. As here we've got the our old friends, the Skyfires, are back. You thought they were gone. No, they're still in the mix. I mean,
21 of them.
All 21 of them. Yeah, I mean, that's still a lot of Skyfires. Let's not mess around. I mean, yeah, that's what it is. It's 21 Skyfires and then some other stuff that's hanging on, right? I'm
really interested to see how the list performs because it's pretty much the same list that he won with earlier in the year with the new points costs. So he's, instead of 999, it's 993. Mostly the rest of the list, I believe, is the same. They're still Zenger Skyfires are still really good, really good. So it'll be interesting to see how the current point cost for this list compares to what is, I guess, in power right now.
I don't see though how with all the Alpha Strike stuff, like some of that doesn't just get shot off at the top of one.
I mean, if you don't kill out the unit, he's got fold reality buried on the changeling, right? And I mean, clearly that's what he's planning to do, is to just fold them back in if he needs to. And like clearing 9 Skyfires isn't super easy.
Well, plus, even if you don't clear all 9, if you try to go first and clear one out and don't clear them, if he gets the turn back, if he folds reality, if he gets a double turn, he's shooting, he's charging, and then potentially folding reality again and shooting and charging again. I could see where it could turn the other way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, I look at this list and I think about like a change host against this. And a change host is just going to run roughshod, mortal wounds wise over this thing. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
And then potentially dispel any fold reality attempts because you have magical supremacy.
Right, magical supremacy, and you can use double 6 on the Zinch dice, and make him burn his own, and he doesn't have a Lord of Change giving +1 to the cast. So like you have domination over. If you have 2 6s in the hopper, he can't get that spell through. I don't know, like. I think about like Gary's list against something like this, and like a lot of that stuff's going to get sniped right off the board at the top of one. Probably, yeah. I don't know. Yeah,
to me, it's a really interesting test. I'm glad to see it because Obviously, a lot of people talked about Skyfires. A lot of people complained. They made an adjustment to them. Here's more or less, as Brad pointed out, the same list. And it'll be interesting to see how it performs, right? Like, because this is post-adjustment. If it's still competitive and it feels just that competitive, not broken, then that means they didn't overcorrect, right? That means it ended up roughly where it should be. So we'll see. Okay, let's keep going. Booyah! It's time for bring in the witches. Where are my witches at? So, this is your list, Tom. This is not your list.
Well, no, it's not. It's not. He didn't go with the battalion.
Every list is Tom's list.
Every list is Tom's list, as we discussed at the top of the show. When Tom, basically they released Age of Sigmar, Tom wrote all the lists, and then other people have discovered them like tablets lost in caves in the desert.
All they were waiting for was a good enough player to take them to the Masters.
Which is clearly not me. Boom. No, what I would say is this. He didn't go for the battalion, which surprises me a little bit because it's a cheap battalion. It's very affordable. And he wanted to get the double Knight Venators in there. That's actually that's the decision that's being made here. And so he, instead of getting the double pylon on the Witch Elves, he decided to go with the double Knight Venators to solve the range problem with this list, because this list has a very real range problem.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's easy to bog it down. That said, it's probably the most survivable list in this entire setup.
For now.
For now.
This week,
yeah.
This event.
Yes, for this event, yes. Yeah, I mean, the Blood Rack Medusa is going to cut hordes in half.
Sure.
It's
although I don't like only having one of her.
I was just going to say that.
I agree.
I think
that's the mistake.
The mistake.
Yep.
3 would be a lot better. You need 2 in order to kill any unit above 20 models from Battle Shock. Like if you have any like single model things and you have 2 of those guys, 2 will delete an entire unit on the numbers because of the Battle Shock. So it's sad that they only went with 1, but I get it because he wanted more Knight Venators, right? Because he wanted to be able to mobility and the reach of the heroes. Yeah.
It's a direct swap. That being said, think of all the hordes you've seen in what we've looked at so far and what we're about to hit. Like we're about to hit Hordeathon 2017 on the next 3 lists. And those Medusae, like when you're running up against the stuff we're about to talk about, would have been real useful. That's for darn sure. So
yeah, I mean, I like it. I almost ran this up until the rules conversations we had. And the reality of maybe not being able to run this for the entire year is what stopped me, or a variant of this, what stopped me from going down this road.
Yeah. I mean, it would be
a
interesting.
It'd be a nightmare to play. Let's be very honest about that. Because they're getting 4. So for those that don't know, those Cauldron of Bloods are each projecting a bubble out 9 inches. That anything with the Witch Elf keyword, which is everything here, will actually... Yes, the Cauldron. Yes. Technically, the keyword is like a plural, like it's like Witch Elves instead of Witch Elf or something. Like the keyword is a little bit off on the Cauldron of Bloods, which is.
Hey, we're over here arguing what any means, so
it's true. It's true. It's true. I would assume that Alex got this cleared before he.
Yeah, I would assume that too.
Went down this road. So the idea here is that you have 4 overlapping bubbles, and you just need 1 model in that bubble from each of these units of 30 Witch Elves to give those Witch Elves 4 5-up ward saves against any damage. And so what ends up happening is that on the numbers, this reduces incoming damage by 80%. So if you did 100 wounds to this unit, it would only take 20 wounds. And he has 90 of these. That's a lot. That's And each of those cauldrons is giving all the Witch Elves Battle Shock immunity because of that thing. And then I believe the ability from the cauldron itself is maybe double pylon or something. I don't remember.
I thought there was the battalion that did the double pylon.
Well, the battalion, you roll for every unit within range, and on a 6, they pile in. But I think the Cauldron, you choose a unit to get double pylon as well.
Gotcha.
And those Witch Elves are going to be all really killy, like 3 attacks, 4 attacks each. So
sure,
on 3s and 3s.
No rend, but
no rend, right. So I mean, it's it'll be interesting to see how it performs, is what I would say.
I will be very interested in this one because I agree with you. Ironically, the naked Witch Elves might be one of the most defensive armies running around here, which is comical. That being said, as I pointed out when we talked about this list originally, is the my problem with this list is that it doesn't like to get pulled apart. For it to get that maximum defensive value you're talking about, that Witch Elf has to be like in the middle of all of those cauldrons, right? And so it's hard to it's hard for this list to actually operate across a large board with lots of different objectives.
Yep.
And the second you only have 1 cauldron or 2 cauldrons around, those chicks are going to start dying real fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Comparatively.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they're still not going to battle shock, but like this list feels, I've said this since when you first proposed this list feels too much like it wants to be in one tiny circle, and one tiny circle doesn't control a board. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, all right. Let's talk about the next list from Craig. Craig running the Murder Host / Gore Pilgrims, bringing still both of the battalions and the reinforcement points and the Gaunt Summoner. So he really going all in.
Thank you, Everchosen.
Yeah. I've played against this list a lot, and I wrote this list. This was one of the first lists I wrote, minus the Gaunt Summoner. But I think it's really good. The Gore Pilgrims is excellent, but not having the full Murder Host is a downside for sure. Even with your Brazen Rune, even with your Slaughter Priests. Everything other than the Slaughter Priest is a liability in that list, in my opinion. I think the way to go is full Murder Host, not splitting it up like this. Just from my experience, because I've played against this a few times. This was pretty much what I played against in Game 5 of the Michigan GT, and I don't think it's as good. It's definitely a very, very good list. If you were to take this list, you would just, on the strength of the list alone, you would do very well in an event. But if we're talking about what is the best list on the sheet, I think for some of those reasons, it's not that.
No, I mean, that makes sense. The thing I like about this is obviously the things I like and don't like are similar. Like, it actually has some pretty decent ability to deal. It's almost trying to turn Murder Host into a more jack of all trades, right? It is less focused,
which is not a bad thing. That's good,
right? It has some decent horde answers through the summoner and the potential Balewind. It has interesting mortal wound output, obviously, through the traditional bloodletters and the Bloodsecrator and all that. That Bloodsecrator's aura is going to be 1,000,000 miles long. He doesn't need to ever move and can sit back out of the range of shorter range stuff. There is a ton of Blood Boil going around here, which is, never to be underestimated in a list where you can reroll prayers, right? So there actually is like those Slaughter Priests can all focus, and with rerolled prayers actually Blood Boil the crap out of something.
It's basically a Hell Cannon.
It's basically a Hell Cannon, yeah. Basically. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I like it. I don't disagree with you. I'm not sure. The problem with it is I have trouble picturing it in some of these matchups, right? Because it has pieces that can be picked out. And for some of these other lists that can pick those pieces out, they will weaken it very quickly. Like when it's all together and humming, it has a lot of answers, but a few of those answers can be quite easily removed with the right tools. So. All right. Anything else to say about Mr. Corn list here? I think it's a cool list. I do.
It's a fun Zinch list. Or
All right.
each a fun corn list.
Fun corn list.
It's a great ever chosen list. I mean, it has
There you
Gauntlet,
go.
right?
There you go. All right. Let's talk about Robert's list. Our Seraphon, man. And I was talking about hordes, and yeah, that's a lot of Saurus warriors. Like a whole lot of them. And obviously using the Sunclaw Star Host. So Brad, I feel like you might know Seraphon at least slightly well. You may have a person in your house assembling Seraphon or painting Seraphon, perhaps as we speak.
We might be airbrushing upward of 200 Seraphon at the moment.
That could be happening.
As far as at this top level, I don't know if 80 Saurus warriors are actually enough. I don't quite think their offensive output is quite enough, and they're not quite defensive enough, even though they do ignore Rend 1. The mobility is absolutely the top is as good as it can be. So I would like to see more skinks, more harrying, more running away from fights and still capturing objectives. But it'll be interesting to see how that Bastiladon with the offensive pressure from the Warriors does when it's probably going to be left alone to shoot the shit out of some demons.
Yeah.
So I'll be really happy to see if that does well, because we've got one in our list. Andrea's got one downstairs she's working on for her Seraphon. So although instead of Sunclaw, we went more Shadow Strike with a unit of 40 Saurus warriors.
Gotcha.
So that's why I'm a little biased in my opinion of that. But again, I don't have actual evidence or practice or test games quite yet. I mean, we have some knowledge of it, but I think overall the Seraphon are a much better allegiance, a much better list, but I don't know if they're quite at the top. So this might struggle against some of these lists.
Have you guys heard anybody talking about using the Engine of the Gods to get free turns and score extra points in scenarios?
Yes.
Well, they did clarify that you can't. I thought the FAQ in this clarified that you couldn't score extra turns.
Oh, are you saying for the Masters?
Yeah.
Or just in general?
For the Masters, I thought the FAQ.
Maybe that's why he doesn't have it. Maybe that's why he dropped it.
Yeah, that might be why he dropped it. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it does make that clarification in the FAQ.
Got it. Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't go for the. So I think is it Dracothian's Tail? Is the Mega Battalion that's like under 200 points for the whole thing? I think for me, if I'm gonna go Seraphon, I think that's the way to go. Where you can like summon units automatically without casting or whatever. Like I've looked at Seraphon, and I think because you can get a 1-drop army for under 200 points, and you can do any combination of Seraphon, and it's not. Although I don't really want to use knights, I'll go stick them on objectives. Like I'll teleport around and harry stuff and charge backline heroes and stuff like that with 5 knights, whatever. But you're going to get the whole Mega Battalion for under 200. So it's surprising to me, like he's not going to win a drop war with this. He's like at 6 drops or something like that. Is that right?
I don't remember exactly Sunclaw off the top of my head, but it's right.
Like it's all the warriors. Sunclaw is all the warriors with the Sunblood.
Yep.
And so like he's paying like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drops. Yeah. 7 drops. Sorry. So I mean, I would just be afraid that like a bunch of stuff's going to get shot off at the top of 1.
It puts him firmly in the middle.
I don't think drops are a worry at all for this list, because he can literally backboard edge everything and then put it on his opponent's board edge the next turn.
Yep.
So I don't think that's quite the worry for this list, but I mean, I think there are other problems with it. So
maybe, so what happens? So let me ask a question. So what happens when you get a huge block of, like, let's say Fire Slayers, for example. Okay. They deploy in such a way. Well, most Fire Slayers aren't. Well, most Fire Slayers will still beat the 7 drops. Many Fire Slayers will. The Fire Slayer list here won't. But they could probably zone him almost off the table completely. Like, pin all of his units against the back edge of the board with the, like, dropped Volkites that charge in. And then zone everything out with the other 120 models. Or I think about, like, KO, who could drop and assassinate the Slann for sure. No questions asked. Like, all the heroes at the top of 1.
I think it's a little bit different between worrying about getting shot off the first turn, worrying about getting outzoned. It's really up to him to deploy differently for the different situations.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, you know what you're facing, right? It's not like he's blind deploying against an army he has no idea what they have.
Yeah.
So like he can make the choice to backboard to be on the line or to even corner castle it, right?
Yeah.
Because like he could literally burrow down pretty deep and keep things like he could actually keep things pretty distant away just with wrapping if he wanted to. And then just move them as necessary. Yeah. All right. So, Andy with a little Nurgle list. The Exalted Guo, man. All right. Good stuff.
I think this list is literally the spoiler list.
You think so?
It's going to ruin somebody's weekend and probably take their chance at winning the Masters.
Yeah.
I am quite disappointed, though, that there are 6 plague drones and not 12 plague toads.
That does feel like a missed opportunity. But then I think probably the number of people who own 12 plague toads is limited to like a handful of human beings. Brad and like there's like
that one person that had the Tamerkan army at Holy Havoc 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I put 12 plague toads out on my table when I was putting together a Nurgle list this weekend, and holy shit. It takes up a lot of space. That is a lot of meat.
So when you say this is the spoiler list, do you just mean like it's going to show up, not do much, and basically prevent somebody from achieving anything, but not necessarily win? Like it's just going to be a draw list, basically. Is that what you're saying? Because of its nature?
Maybe not a draw list, but if you beat this list, you're not going to get very many points, and points are going to be the tiebreaker.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you can beat it at all, because you can't kill anything.
Right.
I mean, it depends on what he's facing, if they can actually get to objectives, which they might not be able to because Nurgle's pretty slow. But again, you're not going to be able to kill anything. You're going to be -3, -2 to hit everything on the first turn, so you can't alpha strike it. So it's just going to march towards objectives and try to grind and get enough models in to score while not dying.
But at the same time, like a Fire Slayer list, for example, could alpha strike out a line, string it across the whole board, and just let them grind on those Slayers for 2 turns.
Well, like that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem with Plague Bears. They can't really kill anything.
Right, and so like a Fire Slayer list will just cut this list off from advancing, sit on all the objectives, rack up a bunch of points, and then by the time the Plague Bears get to the objectives on turn 3, maybe turn 2, turn 3, you're not gonna have like any time to actually shift the game for the other 90 Slayers. I don't know.
Yeah, I do not disagree with your read, Brad. I really don't. Like lists like this, and I've talked about this on the show before, but lists like this that function like this, Nurgle in general, and these sorts of like extremely sort of anvil gum lists, like these Tari lists, drive me crazy because they spend the whole game not letting you do what you showed up to do. Like, did you want to hit and kill models? Is that why you brought stuff? Well, you made the wrong choice.
Well, at least they don't have 4, if not 5, wound ignores, and you're rolling dice for the entire game and get to turn 2.
Hey,
you're probably gonna at least.
I mean,
I didn't say any names or point any fingers. I'm just
right. I mean, who would ever do that? What horrible human being? What detestable person would ever do something like that? No one I know, that's for sure. So that's nice. Got that at least.
Yeah, pour another one, Tom.
I need more Scott. Right.
All right. Last 4. I know we're running short on time, so we'll move through these kind of quickly. All right, Tom, talk about your Fire Slayers. Go. Not your list. I'm just saying this guy's name. This is Tom. You're Tom.
No,
it's Fire Slayers. You can't stop giving Fire Slayer examples to every scenario. So
I mean, like Fire Slayers are at the top, and if you have to consider Fire Slayers, you have to consider Change Hosts, you have to consider KO. Like in my mind, and a Murder Host. Like those are the lists to beat. And he made some surprising decisions here. I don't know that I would have went with 2 separate units of Sky Wardens. I don't know. Like he's lost the drop war, I guess. Anyways, like he's too 6, 8. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I guess you could split them. You're not going to lose anything by doing that. Yeah, so this list is going to deploy 60 Volkites on the table. And then you're going to have 30 more Volkites and 30 of your Hearthguard up in tunneled and underground. And you're just going to push everything forward and deep strike those other 2 units where they need to either kill something or they need to hold an objective. And it's a bunch of ward saves, you know. So the irony is I was like, I'm not going to do a super defensive army, and then I started painting up Fire Slayers, and I'm like, shit, that's exactly what these guys are. They get the 4-up save on everything, plus rerollable saves, and yeah, I mean it's a good list. Like, this is a very standard list. Yep. That Rune Father will pass out. He's going to make everybody immune to Battle Shock within 12 inches, any unit within 12 inches, and when his command ability is activated, he will be able to push mortal wound or push wounds on a 5-up out to the nearby, or 4-up, I think, 5-up out to the nearby units on a save. So I mean, it's good. You know, the key to beating this list would be assassinating that hero at the top of 1, the Rune Father, before he has a chance to activate. And then once that happens, nothing is Battle Shock immune. Like, you do that, and then everything is shockable, and then you just go to town deleting individual units. So this army is very susceptible to zoning. I think about something like, we don't have this list here, but I think about something like Joe Cryer's Change Host is maxed out like 200 plus 220 model Change Host, where like if you start off the table, he's a 1-drop, he will straight zone your ass off the table. Like, you will never bring those other 60 models on.
Sure.
And he will grind down the 70 models that you start with, and you just won't bring those other models into the game. And so, you know, starting so much off the table is dangerous, is what I would say.
I think, again, it comes down to knowing when you can and can't, which hopefully at this level they probably do know that.
Yeah. No, agreed. Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Lori's Sylvaneth here. So we've got Aloriel, meaning the only special character, like named character, is in this whole thing is Aloriel, right? And she appears twice.
No.
Who else was there? Oh, Kairos.
We have
That's
Be'lakor.
right. There you go. Oh,
Kairos, Be'lakor, and Sail.
Oh, well, I don't count Sail, but yes, you're right. I guess he has a name, dude. I just forget that he's actually not, that Sail isn't a reference to the thing he does.
The Changeling, Blue Scribes.
Yep. Sorry, Vince, you're wrong on
just
a whole
killing
bunch
me.
of
All right, fair enough. Our second Aloriel. I take back everything I said. I forgot about all those little people. I was thinking of like the sort of mega named people, I guess, in my head.
Don't invite the auditor back to your show.
There you go. And then, you know, a lot of Kurnoth hunters, one big group of dryads. None of the battalions or, you know, anything like that. None of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about this other than it's okay.
I think it's just okay. I think, unfortunately, Sylvaneth are kind of getting left behind. They're becoming a little bit of a victim of power creep lately. Not so much that their book is bad. It's just that their hard counters seem to be what are being the current releases and the current strengths. So, I mean, as the wheel spins again, maybe they'll come back. But, I mean, they have good movement. I think he probably should have stuck the sides in 1 unit of 6 instead of 2 3s. I'm a fan of that build. And I think it would have been nice to ally in some sisters for the 30 dryads.
Right.
But there's a lot of points on Alariel, so.
Sure, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Like, she's so many points, right?
And she can start off table in this list. Like, that's the advantage, is that she can, because I'm assuming that she has force that she just hasn't listed. Maybe Citadel Woods. Like, I'm assuming that she is bringing woods, right? Because she has an Acorn of the Ages. Yes,
they're free.
So yes. So I mean, you can start off table with Sylvaneth and pop in, right? Like, so like she's not going to get shot off. right? Like that's the advantage here of this Alariel in a Sylvaneth army, is that you will have some flexibility as to where she pops up and what fight she gets into.
It depends too, because if you're trying to stay off the table to not get shot off, but then you get out deployed by a dropping Kharadron Overlord's list and pinned, it's
right.
Yeah,
it's
true.
double-edged.
Yeah, exactly. And again, no battalion, no anything. You know, this is the drops is what it is, right? I mean, this is. And there's actually now that being said, there's a fair number of higher drop lists. So whatever. But yeah, I'll be interesting to see how that plays out, like how the drop thing, because there's actually a fair number of people who just sort of eschewed the drop war at all in this, and just said, you know, this is what we're doing. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over here. All right. So next up, we've got another Fatesworn, although this one's not, I don't like this one as much. That's just personal take, because I love Chaos Knights and Chaos Warriors, and the other one in the numbers that they were in. Not that this doesn't have both, but the numbers aren't there. The Fate Master, happy to see that guy rocking the phantasmal weapons. I feel like that's a miss. Should have been a paradoxical shield, obviously.
I don't know what this army is doing. Like, and I just say that, like, I look across this and, like,
2 Balewinds, obviously. I'm wondering why you don't drop the Carrick Acolytes for Marauders and save yourself 120 points for another Balewind.
Yeah, like the advantage of those Carrick Acolytes is you have an 18-inch range attack with Neg 1 Rend because of the battalion. Like, that's why they're doing it, is you're getting 10 Neg 1 Rend 18-inch attacks. But is that really worth it? Why aren't the Tzeentch Knights in 9s instead of 10s here? For the extra ward save. Why are the Chaos Warriors not in 9s instead of 10s for the extra ward save from the battalion?
Sure.
Both of those seem like misses to me. I don't know. Like, you don't have any real. There's no real anvil units. There's no real hyper mobility. I mean, there's some range attack, a couple range attacks. I don't know. I like Be'lakor. I'm a huge Be'lakor fan.
Yeah, I mean, my problem with this one is I agree with your read. Like, I don't know what you need to take and hold something that's going to happen in this tournament. What in this list takes and holds it? I guess the Knights. That's your only option. Okay, that's an okay answer, but they can't be. There's nothing incredible buffing them, right? Like there's no great stacking.
Well, there's the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, so they'll have like reroll 1s to hit wound and saves.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
I don't know that I call that. Yeah. Like, okay. Good on them. I mean, that's still not going to help them from getting peeled like a soft fruit if they hit any kind of hammer, right? Sure. Like you have to have them stacked with defenses to truly make Knights into a real anvil, right? Because normally the anvil of the Warriors and the other thing is half being done by the fact that they're just 54 wounds.
Right.
Right.
Just raw bodies.
Yeah, I mean, the Knights are 30 wounds. That's what that is. Okay, it's all right.
Yeah, I don't know. Good luck.
And it's not like, I mean, I love seeing more Fatesworn, but I don't know where the strong hammer is to hammer down their anvils, and I don't know where the strong anvils are to actually hold what you need to hold.
Right.
It's a lot of small synergies that I'm not sure are going to get there.
And there's some small arms fire that, like, there's as much. It
isn't going to outdo shooting armies, right? Like other armies with small but efficient shooting will just blow those guys off the table,
right?
If they need to.
Yep, like the Marauder Horsemen, and all the Acolytes have like that Neg 1 Rend attack, and I'm just like, hey, like one unit of. No, just a standard like deployment of riggers with their shots, not their saws, have as much small arms fire.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even need to go back that far. You can just go back to the previous list, and like those 6 Kurnoth Hunters with great bows are going to be a nightmare for everything you just said, right? I mean, not that they would ever target that crap. They're gonna shoot the important people down, But
Sure.
but my point is that
Sure.
if they needed to, they could just turn and be like, "Yep, that's dead." Right? Like just
Yep.
pick off any one of those they wanted.
Yeah, and I look at this list. I don't know how this list responds to Alariel when she comes barreling in. Maybe Be'lakor. I mean, he ignores Rend. You could get into 3 upper roll ones, ignore Rend. So I guess that he could slow Alariel for a turn or two.
I've played the unkillable BSB in 8th edition for long enough to know that will not stop her.
Right.
You'll need to make those saves. You'll roll 2 2s and she'll roll D6 wounds
Yeah.
on attack.
Well, I mean, one beetle smack gets through, and that's 5 wounds straight to Be'lakor's face, and then he's going to be like, we're in arcane bolt territory to finish him, right?
Right. I mean, that's exactly right. Yeah. So I just okay.
Sure.
Or
all right.
like
Let's
imagine
finish
the
it
world. Out. Yeah. Go ahead.
Bone splitters. So here, we've got a traditional Cunning Ruck. I'm glad we get to finish on the Cunning Ruck. I don't know if I'd call it traditional, but we have a Cunning Ruck. How about that?
I love it. I love this. I love seeing these guys on the table. It's going to be a nightmare to roll those dice, but it's a 1-drop Cunning Ruck. We have a destruction army.
Absolutely. I'm sad it's this and not an Ironjawz list, but that's just my own personal opinion on that. I like the 6 big Stavas. I like that. That's fun.
He's got 60 points unspent for the chance at that good old the roll to try to get rerolls to hit or
the inspiration or whatever it is, because he is the lowest one, right? Like I think Ben, I don't think anybody else came in that low, so he'll get that every game.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody else. Yeah, 1950.
Yep, 1950 is the next lowest.
Oh no, if the 1950 guy comes up against the 1940 guy, he's gonna be like, oh, come on.
Oh, no, the 1940. Here we go. No, never mind.
Yeah. He's the lowest one. It.
I'd be pretty salty. if I was Sedge rolling up on that.
I mean, sure. Like I was worried that Bone Splitters were gonna be were not gonna show up at all after GHB 2017. So it's encouraging to see them having a place at the table.
Yeah, I mean, Brad, any thoughts on this particular one?
I mean, it's Cunning Ruck. Everybody hates playing against it. It can be pretty solid in its output, but I'll be interested to see how it stacks up against some of the newer filth.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I agree. All right. So that's the lists.
Yeah, like as a brief aside, again, one of my go-to, like I think about like how does that stack up against a Tzeentch, like 6 I'm going to bail in and just snipe the key character off on that Cunning Ruck. Like that doesn't end well for them, or even the KO. Like I need to drop within 24 inches of my target. That's not generally too hard.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So here's my final question for both of you gentlemen. Yeah. And then we'll close this up because we've already gone long. Brad, is there any list or sort of like list archetype you didn't see that you were expecting to see, or that you're surprised you didn't see somebody bring?
No, actually, I think they've covered. I think they've covered most all of it pretty well. I'm trying to think of stuff that I have locally, stuff that I practice against, and stuff that I expect to see. And they've got it pretty well covered.
Tom, you thinking at the same time? I'm sad there's no Ironjawz, but as I said, I understand why there's no Ironjawz.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't surprise me. It makes me sad, but it doesn't surprise me. There's a difference.
Like, I might have suspected, or I might have expected maybe an Ironjawz list, maybe. I mean, maybe I'm just over hoping too much that that Ironjawz are in a better place than they are. No, I mean it's all pretty par. The Sylvaneth list is not what I would have expected. I would have expected a different Sylvaneth list. Yeah.
All right. Rock and roll.
Follow-up question. Pick your winner. Who wins?
Oh, of course. We've got to do well, let's do this. I want to expand your question, if I may. Your favorite list and the list you think will win, right? Because those are two very different things, maybe.
Tony
Not for
Moore.
Brad. Okay.
Tony Moore.
There you go.
Well,
so that is the first.
That's
change
your
hosted.
list. I mean, of course,
He ain't
Brad has
playing
already
because it's
selected
bad.
that. Yes, no, that's true. I'm gonna select.
You're gonna pick Gary because he's in the chat. That's what you're gonna do.
I am gonna select Gary because Tony has only lost against one person, and that's Gary both times.
Gary's gonna play Nurgle and Fire Slayers the first 2 rounds. Suck it. Sorry, Gary. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the question is like Gary will probably face that Fire Slayer list at some point. I don't know about the Nurgle because it's a spoiler list. I don't know, like, if Gary wins his first game or two, he may jump out of range of that Nurgle list quickly.
Unless he plays it first.
Unless he plays it first, which he has a 1 in 8 shot of, or no, 1 in, no, more than that. 1 in, 15.
That would suck.
It would be so terrible. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think Gary. I'm gonna go with Gary for my my list that I want to see win, or that I think will win. For my favorite list, I'm gonna go the Witch Elves because, man, it takes balls to roll in with a Witch Elf list like that. Like, who would have thought that a Daughters of Cain list would have shown up in the UK Masters a year ago?
Who would still think it'll happen again? Not many people, because this question's going to get answered at some point in time. And either we'll see more of them, or we'll never hear from them again. And so let's just put this to bed. That's what's going to happen.
True.
For my favorite, I'm going to have to pick the Fatesworn Zinch list, just personal favorite. It uses a lot of tools I really like.
Boo.
The
good one.
The first one. Yeah. The one with the 27 Chaos Warriors. The first one.
Yep.
The one with Sail and again, it's not perfect. It's not, well, I don't know, it's not perfect. I'm not a good judge of that. It's not exactly the way I would build it, which is not perfectly either. But I think there are some edges that could be sharpened on that knife, is what I'll say.
Yep. We
talked about some of them. Now for my win, I'm picking Jack and the Vanguard. Because I think it's pretty good.
I'm sure he'll have practiced with it a lot, but I'm interested to see how the different list plays, both with and against, because it's not what he won with, but it's also not what people have seen and will expect. So,
Right. Yeah, I think it's got a lot of good redundancy and is going to be very hard to stop from its operating premise. It has a plan and it's going to execute on that plan pretty effectively.
But realistically, Brad, if you were facing off with your Zinch list against Jack's list, you have answers.
I wouldn't leave holes for him to weave into my back.
Right. You have the bodies. You have answers where he'd never be able to get near your bunker. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to Balewind somebody that can start sniping off those heroes, right?
I'm going to try.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I hear your call, Vince, but I really
if not kill as many liberators in the first turn as possible.
Right. I mean, let's be honest, because a Gaunt Summoner at the top of 1 is going to put on average 15 wounds on that unit alone.
I'm telling you, I can do 60 wounds to that unit. 60 mortal wounds to that unit.
Pick up the whole thing.
Or just do 9 and kill all the prosecutors so there's no teleporting.
That too. Yeah. Well,
I mean, that's
if he's smart, he keeps
keep one in the heavens.
I mean, keep one in the heavens, keep one back out of range spells. So.
Right.
And he is smart, obviously. He's a very good.
So anyways, but there's answers.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is going to be a real interesting showdown. We'll talk about how it all shakes out when it shakes out. The actual tournament itself, when is that? Well, I don't even have the date in front of me. When is the tournament itself?
Is it this weekend?
Does anybody know?
It's not pertinent to our conversation.
Yeah.
It's coming up. It's either this weekend or next weekend. Gary.
Yeah, I don't know which weekend it is.
Gary, you are in the chat. When is this tournament? I know you're thinking about it.
He's up right now at
It is
4
it is
o'clock in
this
the
weekend.
morning thinking
Yes.
about it.
This
Yeah.
weekend. There you go.
It
All
is
right,
this
cool.
weekend.
So we'll
Yeah.
talk about it next week on the show and see how it all shook out. We'll do a little check-in. But there you go. That brings us to a close. Brad, very much appreciated you coming on the show tonight, sharing a lot of your wisdom and insight with us, sir. It's much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Always a good time. Absolutely. For all of you out there, thank you very much for watching. Always appreciated. We love having you. We love doing these deep sort of dives into stuff like this. We'll do it more whenever the opportunity arises. But as always, we thank you for watching. We'll see you next Wednesday.